You're watching RT International live from Moscow with me, Nadira Tudor. Welcome to the programme. In Syria, residential areas in the government-held west of Aleppo have come under constant rebel shelling today. RT's Lizzie Phelan has visited some of the hospitals where the wounded are being treated. A warning now, you may find some of the following video disturbing.
There's been relentless civilian death toll here in West Aleppo.
The UN is still holding back from dispatching humanitarian crews to the war-torn city. Here's how it explains its hesitation.
We had hoped.
The Defence Ministry has responded to the UN declaration. A spokesman stressed that the UN's calls to get humanitarian aid into eastern Aleppo stopped as soon as 40% of the area was recaptured by government troops. Throughout the week, we've also heard from Russia's foreign minister as well as the Russian envoy to the UN.
The threat to the Castello Road.
The US House of Representatives has moved to ban the financing of any bilateral military cooperation between the US and Russia. Caleb Morpin has more details from New York.
Representatives has just passed the defense budget.
Austria's presidential election is this Sunday. The vote is a rerun after the previous result was declared invalid. The candidate who came out on top back in April was the Freedom Party's Norbert Hofer. RT's Yegor Piskunov has been talking to him about his chances of victory this time around.
Well, first of all, as Austrians prepare to head for the...
François Hollande announced he's throwing in the towel by not seeking re-election to the French presidency. He's the first incumbent leader in the country's modern history not to re-stand.
I am aware of the risks that going...
News has, of course, made headlines all around the world. It's big news. In the French media, they've been stunned by what they've called a bombshell. But just how surprising...
President François Hollande has shown courage to face reality. It's true, with his policies over the past 4 years.
Change to the country's foreign policy. That story and much more in just a moment. Donald Trump says Washington will pursue a new approach to its foreign policy by not involving itself in another country's affairs. RT's Gana Chichikan has more.
Donald Trump wants to put Washington's foreign policy on a different track, one that focuses on fighting terror.
In the headlines of late, it's all about false news stories which hope to influence political affairs. The issue's been thrust into the spotlight following the US election result. A Washington Post article accused 200 US news sites of being routine peddlers of Russian propaganda. My colleague Andrew Farmer discussed the fake news craze with Freddie Gray, the deputy editor of Britain's Spectator magazine.
I think it's obvious to anyone with a brain that the Democrats...
Russia's longest-serving ambassador to the United Nations died in New York on Monday. His sudden death came just a day before his 65th birthday. Vitaly Churkin spent more than 40 years in the Russian diplomatic service and served at the UN for more than a decade, having a reputation of a very intelligent and combative figure. His colleagues at the UN held a moment of silence after receiving the tragic news.
He was a dear colleague of all of us.
The US Senate has voted unanimously to renew sanctions against Iran for another decade. It's been described... We have some breaking news this hour. A passenger flight from Zurich to Moscow has been diverted back to Switzerland due to, quote, unforeseen difficulties. The Airbus is operated by the Russian company Aeroflot. Some reports say there was a fire on one of the plane's engines, and we're closely monitoring the situation and will, of course, bring you updates as soon as we get them. Up next on RT, the story of young students risking their lives to revive traditional Afghan music. Stay with us. Among the topics next on Boom Bust, Italy's referendum this weekend, which could possibly result in the country quitting the euro or even leaving the EU completely.